everybody. And he screams, well, where is everybody? In much the same way that you did, Rob, prior to going live.
Yes, I did.
Really funny start, Alex. So I was in the green room, and Rob pulled me into the main thing, and he said, "Thank God you're here." And I said, 56 years I've been waiting for someone to say that.
And what did I say?
He said, "I figured as much."
All right. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good day, and welcome to another episode of the Digital Download,
which is
the longest running weekly business talk show on LinkedIn Live. Today we have a fantastic episode. I'm so excited about this one. We're talking about, can your organization survive without you? And really, isn't that the ultimate goal? I mean, whether you're an entrepreneur leading your own venture or a career professional contributing to the growth of an existing organization, at some point, you're going to have to move on from your current role and responsibilities and on to the next. So how do you prepare for this? But before we dive in, let's go around the horn with some quick introductions. Adam, would you kick us off, please?
Indeed. Hi, everyone. I'm Adam Gray. I'm co-founder of DLA Ignite, and I'm really looking forward to this episode. I feel in a really good place with this, I think.
Excellent. Tim.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tim Hughes. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. It's always a highlight of Friday, the digital download.
Awesome. Alex.
It certainly is. Hello all, Alex Abbott, founder of Supero and very proud partner of DLA Ignite.
Awesome. And myself, I am Rob Durant, founder of Flywheel Results. We help startups scale, and I'm also a very proud partner of DLA Ignite. This week on the Digital Download, we have a special guest, Sandeep Patel, hustler, entrepreneur, businessman, and self-proclaimed wanderer. Sandeep had been following a journey of his own making since he first identified an industry problem about 20 years ago. Obsessed with solving this problem, Sandeep is now the CEO of IORAD, an organization he has led from the idea stage through to a thriving tech company. So he's going to share with us his journey and the things that we can think about as we examine our own path. But to tell us a little bit about himself, his path, and what's next, let's bring him on. Sandeep, welcome.
Hello, everybody. Whoa. I'm bowing.
Sandeep, let's start with this. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and then the journey?
So Sandeep Patel, as Rob said, I am the founder, CEO of a company called IORAD. It's a tutorial builder. So we show people how to use applications. That's what our software does. The journey is a little bit of a longer story. I can kind of give you the Cliff Notes version.
We've got time.
Okay. So I graduated with a biology degree with the hopes of becoming a doctor. I realized I don't like hospitals. So then I kind of fluffed around for a bit trying to figure out where my place in the world was. So I became a stockbroker. So I got my Series 7. I was in life insurance. I did a bunch of different things, just trying to figure out where my place was. I fell into this e-learning space just by happenstance. And that's kind of where my journey started. So in this e-learning business, I was consulting for Big Pharma. I would go into their shop, and then I would have to learn their process and then build this e-learning and then sit with the subject matter expert and kind of iron everything out and then get it up onto the thing. And so I built that business. I had like really 4 full-time clients. And so one of the themes across all four was, hey, this most of the training involved system training. And so when it's system training, I was doing a lot of screenshots, and it was a really painful process. So that's kind of like where I started the idea fryer at. I was like, oh my God, what if these tools that we are currently using, what if they were in the cloud and they were easy enough for the actual subject matter expert to use themselves so that they don't have to hire somebody super expensive like me. So that's where the idea started. I am not a developer, nor am I a designer. So it took a very, very long time. And the technologies that you see in cloud today, they actually didn't exist back then. So we were right at the start. And so it took a lot of experimentation. The good thing for me was I had this consulting business. So I didn't want to I think my superpower is really self-awareness. So my thing was, hey, I don't want to go around pitching, trying to raise money. I said I wanted to kind of, because I can't take rejection, right? My ego. And if you can't do that, then you're probably not going to be a good fundraiser. So I said, all right, what is it that I can do? I said, oh, I'm pretty good at this e-learning thing. I could kind of expand it and then use all of that money to then pay for product development. So that's what I did. And obviously when you're self-funded, bootstrap, it takes a lot longer. But again, there's a lot more suffering involved. But again, you have freedom. So at the core of who I am is really all my decisions that I do are filtered through that lens, is a freedom lens. It's not a money lens. It's not a this, it's freedom. Hey, how can I control my own thing? So with that, obviously there's really, really low valleys because my wife is seeing all of this money coming into the account because the consulting business is doing really well. And then she goes to the grocery store to get a thing of diapers and the credit card gets rejected. And she's like, what are you doing? Where's all this money going? And I'm like, listen, I had to make payroll this week. So obviously these cycles have been, the highs are high and the lows are lows. But again, it took a very long time to get our first version up. So from idea stage, I mean, this is not for, this is a warning when you're going this route. Like I went 7 years with just product development and experimenting and hiring and firing. And on 2014, it was finally ready because it was always easy for me because I was so obsessed with the problem. I was always designing for myself. I was so intimate with the problem that I knew what a solution could look like. So in 2014, it was actually ready for public consumption in terms of like charging somebody. So we turned on it was always a freemium. So people were always trying out the product. But in 2014, I actually turned on the billing, and it was before I went to sleep. And then at 3 o'clock in the morning, I heard a bing. And I looked over and it was our first sale. And I literally turned around and I shook my wife. You won't believe it. We got our first sale. And she's like, how much? And I said, $40. And she turned around and she was like, you woke me up for $40. But to me, that was the start. It was like, hey, somebody saw value in this. And then, yeah, we've kind of grown organically through the years. And it's just been, I'm finally at the other side where I can really appreciate the journey. And now I get to do the things that I like to do. And there's people on the team that like to do the things that I hate to do. So it's kind of been really cool now on this side of the hill.
So 20 years to overnight success.
That's right.
There you go. I want to share something quickly with the audience. This is a post that Sandeep had earlier in the week. Over the years, I've used hustler, entrepreneur, and businessman interchangeably, but words matter when you're in it. So here's my stab. Hustler, your survival. Entrepreneur, your idea survival. And businessman, your business survival without you. My current stage, 2.5. And that was really the motivation behind the theme of today's talk. I knew we were going to have you on the show, but what were we going to talk about? We'll see where the conversation takes us. So my first question to you then is, how do you take time to enjoy the journey without feeling guilty for stopping to smell the roses from time to time?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the way I've kind of did it, and this is kind of from the beginning, was I knew that there was no such thing as work-life balance. All I did was I basically said, hey, IRAD is just like one of my kids. So I have 3 kids. IRAD is a 4th kid. So depending on the day, one may require more attention than the other, right? So that was basically how I looked at it. It was like, hey, so the good thing about IRAD is we are not some mission critical. We're not saving lives. So in the end, there's nothing that's so critical enough, unless the server goes down and customers can't do what they can do. But really, there's nothing that's so critical that can't wait till tomorrow. So that, just having that little mindset, it basically says, oh, you know, your daughter's in some ballet recital. Oh, I'd rather see that than work on, you know, do this, this security questionnaire for a potential customer, which I can do tomorrow. So that really was how I looked at things, was because in the early days, you are doing all of your attention's on this kid because it needs you the most. It's like just born, and you got to put the attention. And so, but over the years, you try to just, you know, do it that way. And so now I'm kind of, the mistake that I made was the being present, right? So although I was there at all my kids' things, I wasn't fully there because I'm thinking about the business. And then over the years, you start realizing, and actually this goes in great parallel with the post. So that post came about was because I always use those 3 words interchangeably, and I was like, no, they're actually bands, right? So the way we look at it is a hustler. A hustler is basically for your own survival, where you're trying a bunch of different things, you're figuring out where you're good at. And so I figure that span, and it depends on who you are as a person and what you're doing. It might last 1 year, it might last 10 years, who knows, or 15 years. But the thing is, as you're hustling, you're going to get this insight, right? This insight that nobody else sees, because you've tried so many different things. And now you see this little thing that everybody else is kind of overlooking. And that's when that's that light bulb moment. Now, as an entrepreneur, your idea, your basically mission is, hey, don't let this idea or this little insight that I have that everybody else is missing. My goal now is to make sure that this thing doesn't die, the idea. So now you're just basically going in and you're putting all of your attention on this idea. You might still be hustling, obviously, just like I was with my consulting business. And I was taking this money and making sure this entrepreneur stage is trying to go. And as you slowly get more and more customers, and mind you, these 2 stages of hustler and entrepreneur, it's all emotional driven, right? Because you have these high highs, these low lows, and you need that emotion to keep you marching up the hill. And so now, once you get to a point where you're at the business stage, so the business stage is where you want the business to survive without you. So the hard part here is now you have to take emotion completely out of it, because it actually isn't about you at all. It's about everybody else, the team, right? So when you're doing these things, it's like, and that's kind of like the struggle that I'm having right now as a leader, is how do I take all of this emotion out of it, right? So one of the things, I don't know, Rob, I might have told you, was I've been in product this entire time, and I'm really obsessed with this product. And so the transition I made was when I started hiring people was because I've always had a product team, but I didn't have a business team. I just had one customer support person and me. And so what I was finding myself was I became more of a micromanager, because now I'm looking, hey, what are you up to? Because the ideas were no longer coming from me. They were coming from the customer. So I was just like, oh, is this why I got in this? And that's when I kind of knew that, hey, I'm ready for the next phase. So you got to be super tapped into the intuition part of you to listen, because timing is really the difficult part. But because your ego, the way I kind of look at it, I'm jumping all over the place, but ego it's loud. it wants the best. It's always like, hey, I want more followers, more money, more this. Your intuition is always whispering, right? And so it's like, how do you, and this is like when you look at Jerry Seinfeld and how did he go off on top? And then you have other people that'll go to the wheels fall off. So it's like, how are they tapped into that? Because when you're a big fan of Seinfeld, you're like, man, how come he just didn't do one more season? But his intuition told him that, hey, I've probably used up all my best ideas. Let me move on to the other, something new. And so that's the skill I'm trying to develop now, is really honing in on that intuition or the gut. Because I feel like when you're creating something, these things, it basically connects you to the universe. And that universe is always whispering, whether it's through a dream and it's through a sign of some kind. So it's just figuring out and tapping into that frequency, where you can kind of figure out what is the next move. And so that's kind of like, it's just like lowering the volume on the ego and then increasing the volume on the intuition. So that's kind of where I'm at. I don't even know if I see where I started. I don't even know.
No worries. I want to bring in some of the comments that we've had from the audience so far. Robert says maturity in a business is really when you get to a level of predictability. And Sean Adams says ego is loud, intuition is whispering. Might be the fifth IORAD core value. I'm taking that's an inside joke there.
Do you know that? Do you know Sean, Sandeep?
Yeah. He's our rock star. He's our absolute rock star.
So how do you recognize when your role has changed? I heard you say, it's a feeling in your gut, but was there some sort of benchmark or metric or something that helped you come to that realization?
Yeah, and that's why I keep going back to self-awareness, is like understanding who you are, because I think we're all exceptions, honestly, and there are no rules. That's the way I look at it. It's like everybody's story is a little different, and it really depends on who you are, what your core strengths are. And once you're tapped into that frequency I was talking about before internally, you kind of just know. Like, and that's really like, like Michael Jordan going on top, or Jerry Seinfeld example as I was giving before, is like, you kind of just know. If you're like really aware, there's no like metric or thing like that. It's just like, hey, when you know, that's as simple as I can put it. Is like, when you're in it, you're doing all these things, but at some point, something's going to click inside of you, and it's gonna be like, hey, maybe I'm ready for more growth, whatever it is. And then it's like, okay, I need to hire a team. So then your focus goes into that. And so I never looked at it. My whole thing was, once you get to break even as a company, you're kind of free, right? Where you can just swing for the fences, depending on what it is that you want to do and how you want to do. So I always looked at it from there. Once I hit and I could pay my bills and I could go on vacation, I'm good. So now I can kind of tap into that intuition and kind of go where the wind takes me, right? And so that basically is, it's not a good answer, I guess, but it really is, you just know when you know.
So Sandeep, you've a question from me. You've bootstrapped the business, so you've put a lot of your not just your mind, but also money into the business. You're still CEO and running it, I assume. Okay. Mm-hmm. So when do you think it's time to step back from that?
Yeah, and that's really the same thing. It's like, as long as you enjoy what you're doing, and again, like I said, 90% of the stuff that we do throughout the day is just mind-numbingly soul crushing, but there's this 10% that makes it worth it. And then once that 10% is no longer worth it, then it's probably time to move on. So for right now, I'm really enjoying the ride, right? So in the end, we have a lot of different options, and when you have options, it's great. And so you just keep going. So I really look at it from a day-to-day thing, right? So as long as you're having fun and that 10% is worth it at the end, just keep going.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Rob.
I was just going to say, a lot of options, but you can't pursue all of them simultaneously. How do you pick and choose? How do you know where you're swinging for the fences and where you're maybe holding back and just continuing day to day?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it really is around clarity and clarity of vision, so that you have, because what happens is, it's just like anything else. It's like when you start out, it's like a painting, right? It's super, super blurry, right? And when it's super, super blurry, you get super confused. You have all of these options. You'll try one, you'll do one, and then as time goes by and you're doing intentional things, the vision gets clearer and clearer, right? And then when your vision is crystal clear, 2020, it's easy to see which option is the right option and which option is the wrong option. So that to me is like the thing, and this is not just for business but for life itself. It's just when you're growing the team and you have all these relationships, when you yourself are not clear, things go awry, right? With the team, with your wife, with your kids, is because you're confused. So they obviously are going to be confused. So the whole point of anything that we do is just to get to a clear, basically get to clarity. Once you have clarity, you'll know that, hey, I know my business. I know who I am as a person. So when this massive company comes to you and says, "Hey, man, we want you as we want to use your service, but you got to do X, Y, Z. You got to do this. You got to get $10 million in insurance." You can easily, like, and this happened where you're just like, "No, not interested." So that wouldn't have happened for me 3 years ago, even, because it was a blurry vision. You just want everybody to love you, and then what you do is you'll sign that contract. And then you'll realize, man, I'm actually losing money on this customer, right? So that only comes with clarity and understanding who you are as a person and what your business actually stands for. So that to me is the number one thing that I'm trying to achieve in every aspect of my life, is just super clear.
Nice.
So how quickly did that shift happen? So, you know, for 10 years, 12 years, 15 years, you're kind of plodding along. And
No,
was it like a switch going on, and all of a sudden it's like, right, now we know this is where we're going and what we're doing?
Well, for me personally, yes, it was a switch. And this switch probably happened for me 18 months ago. So it was like super torturous for the first for the for the 3/4 of my life, actually, because you're just doubting everything that you do. And when you doubt everything, there's these two things: is your ego is saying one thing, your gut is saying something else, and that constant battling is really torturous, honestly. And so once you start getting clear, and honestly, it was just like a switch. It was like, and it only comes when you have the freedom and you have like these cracks from that freedom to allow the light to come in. And because I was, when you're in it, it's very hard. But the main thing is, once you get to like, when you get a team, you get you're operating at a profit. All of these then allow you the room to kind of discover who you are and what you want to be. Because up until that point, you're kind of just being in reactive mode, right? When it comes in, you're just like trying to get everything you can. And so, yeah, for me, it was a switch.
Yeah, I get that, and that's kind of how I operate. You know, where you have to have the kind of the foundations in place, and you can build on the foundations, and then it's like having purpose or a clarity to what you're doing, or being selective about what you choose to do, is a choice that comes from being in a strong and secure place where you kind of know what's happening, and you've reached that level. But there are lots of people that talk about, and I can't understand this, lots of people that talk about it the other way around. You know, it's like, so you need to be happy, you need to have purpose, you need to have clarity before any, and it's having those things,
yes,
that creates this reality. And I've always thought that to be kind of a bit counterproductive. It's like it's like having respect. You know, you don't get respect, you earn respect. Yeah. So it doesn't happen when you first land. You have to build that platform. And the same with, you know, having a vision. You know, your first job, you don't have a vision, you don't have purpose. What you have is you do what you're told.
Yeah.
And then you earn the right to say, actually, no, that doesn't fit with what I want to do.
That's exactly right. And yeah, I 100% agree with everything you just said. And it really is around that concept of, yeah, everything that we're doing, especially in the early days, is 99% grunt work, right? So like that 1%, maybe you might win this contract or something like that. It'll come, but as long as you're willing to grind it out. And so if you see when you're early, it's 99%, then every decade it probably goes to 98%, then 97%. And so you're constantly having to do these things that this next generation that's coming up probably is not used to this concept, right? Because they want to go. You'll hear, "Oh, I quit my job because I'm not having an impact." What? Wait, what?
Yeah.
I don't feel like I'm doing something that's impacting the world, or But these are all things that they'll learn maybe later on. Is hey, most of this stuff that everybody does is grunt, and there's like this payoff that's way out in the future. But as long as you are moving, and I think my whole thing is, my thing was consistency, right? So over that 7 years, when we didn't have one paying customer, I know 365 days a year, I did at least one thing to move my idea or vision forward. I did at least one thing, whether it's sending out an email, and this is 365 days a year for 7 years, right? So it's just about that constant thing to push forward. And most people, because we're so results driven, it's so hard, right? When you're and I'm not results driven. So when you are results driven, you are looking at a metric every day, and what happens is it crushes your soul, right? Because you got this number, the number is not coming, and then because what you need to get up that hill, when you're focused on a number, it's way harder versus, hey, I really want this to exist, versus, hey, I want XYZ dollars in the bank, right? So that to me is like the core difference is not being so results focused. I honestly believe that if you do it every day, the results are a byproduct of that, right? So versus having the results being the focus.
I'm so glad you said that, because I kind of, there's so much narrative on social networks about, and I don't mean to belittle it, but about happiness, about purpose, about vision, about joy, about all of this stuff. And my entire working life, that has been alien. That doesn't mean that I haven't had purpose or joy or happiness in doing those jobs, because I have. But that hasn't been the starting point. That's been the end point. The starting point has been wanting to do a good job, doing, as you said, that grunt work. And kind of when you read the narrative that's going on so many social networks, it's all about having a higher purpose and all of that sort of thing. And it makes me feel, sometimes I read it and I just go, if I was starting out again, it'd be so great to start out today, to have that higher purpose from day one. And actually, no, you don't. It's a dream, isn't it? It's a fairy tale.
Yeah.
You have to make it happen. You have to grunt and struggle to get to the point where you deserve that.
Yeah, 100%.
What are some of the strategies or ideas that you're putting into practice now to sort of get you to that next level where you can kind of step away?
Yeah, so the big, and this happened all this week, was because I told you is I'm very emotional driven, and I want to basically take emotion out of it. If you would have asked me even just a week ago, I was like, IRAD, the software, is the foundation. It is the baby. I love it so much. And what you realize is, hey, IRAD, the software, is just a tool. It's a tool for your employees. It's a tool for your customers, so that they can save time and then live a great life, right? So once I came to the understanding that, hey, if I want to take it, if I want to take myself out of the equation and I want to take my emotions out of the equation, I gotta let go of this thing, right? Which is the software, because it's been such an integral part of my life for so long. I became so attached to it, and I used to fight people on like these little decisions that are really insignificant. And I actually lost a lot of sleep over these things that are just meaningless when you look at it. Just, like, hey, should I move this button here or there? Because I did it for so long. And so this is the new thing that I'm intentionally trying to do, is taking the emotion out of it, understanding that IRAD itself is not this glorious, amazing thing. It is just a tool. Just like money is a tool, just like it's really about the people, right? Because if I want to get to a level where IRAD can survive without me, you got to build this team. And now that's the focus is the team. The focus is the customer. It actually is not it's not IRAD, the software, right? So getting that tattooed in my brain has been a bit of a journey, but I'm doing it intentionally. Like I'm putting all of my decisions through that filter. Is like, hey, am I doing this for IRAD, the software, because I'm so attached to it, or am I putting the team and the employees at the team and the customers at the forefront?
A comment from Robert Matson. Yep, it's not the is-does of a product. It's the means why.
Yeah.
So what about when they do it wrong?
And you will do that 1,000 times a day.
So adding to that, one of the things that we have to do as leaders is to allow people to make mistakes. And that's part of the stepping back and the maturity as leaders. I mean, how have you found that? Because this is your fourth child.
Yeah. So again, there's this thing I've been using a lot is authentically selfish. So generally when you're selfish, it's based on somebody else's perception of you, right? So when you can be authentically selfish, like when your gut is telling you something, and then understanding who you are and where you could be at your best, everybody else around you benefits from that. So that is the part where I'm trying to get to, is just 100% authentically selfish. So when we get on our team calls, I basically say, hey, this is a whole new thing for me, because what I found even like these last 3 or 4 months is I was basically when we're on a call with a team member and they're expressing a concern of some kind, I'm basically trying to the entire time I'm like, okay, how do I want to talk so that they think that I'm their savior or whatever you want to call it, right? So that didn't benefit me, that didn't benefit them. Once then I can come in and say, hey, this is where I'm learning this thing as I'm going, right? So I'm going to try to do what's best for me first. And then it's just like that example when they're saying when the plane is going down, the oxygen masks fall, cover your mouth first before you start putting everybody else's on, right? So that is where I kind of I'm trying to get to this authentically selfish place, is just like articulating what it is that I'm looking for as the leader, and then figuring out what their strengths are to kind of come in and do it. So I'm not dancing around anymore. So that really has been a learning for me, is really just being direct and not really. But I also don't want to be a dictator, right? So in the end, it's like figuring out where their strong suits are, and then what the company vision is, and then kind of putting the puzzle together that way.
But Tim said about as a leader, you have to let people make mistakes, and I get that when you're working in a large corporate. You manage a team of people, somebody screws something up really badly, and you just go, oh, well, it's just one of those things. But actually, in your business, you're kind of at that point where you're just the wheels are just about to come off the runway, and is there not that real? So how do you abdicate? It's your child. It matters to you. It's your income.
Yeah.
How do you allow somebody to make a mistake that might sink the business? It might, at the very least, mean you're not going to get paid for a couple of months, but it could be far worse than that. And somebody who, as Gary Vee always says, it's like, it's your business. You can't expect people for whom it isn't their business to work as hard as you do. So this is somebody that's going to sink your business and then go, oh, it's all right, because actually it doesn't matter. I'm leaving next week because I've got another job somewhere else. So how do you reconcile those two things with helping them grow and the potential vandalism almost of your business?
Yeah. So what I basically, so when you hire somebody, you're hiring them because they're better at it than you are, right? Whether it's by 10x, 20x, that's subjective, but you're hiring somebody because they're better at that than you are. So the first thing is once there's like this initial kind of training period, but then they're doing it 8 hours a day, right? In their thing. So there's an amount of trust that has to go in. And I've talked to Rob about this before, is when I hire somebody, I am looking for what I call non-asked outputs. Is like, what are you doing when somebody's not asking you to do something? So how I hired, and I'll tell you, so one the CEO of the company, yeah, he's got this great resume, whatever. And then I was like, okay, so what do you do in your free time? He's like, oh, this, that. I go, do you have any ideas that you're working on? And he said, I got an idea for a board game. I said, board game? I said, oh, cool. I said, do you have like a PowerPoint deck or a rule book? He goes, I'll do you one better. He pauses the Zoom. He comes back, unzooms it, and he's got this this card deck, laminated, branded, the whole thing. He's got the instruction manual, and he's basically, so to me, at that point when he showed it to me, I was like, you're hired. It had nothing to do with any of his work experience, because I knew he could take an idea and he could execute it all the way. So for me, I have to, and this is a part of letting go, is you got to trust. And the good thing about it is it's never too late to turn back. Because in the end, I don't want to be the one that crushes somebody's idea when they're in it more than I am. So they have a lot more experience. So I rather just say, hey, let's try it your way. And then, once we get more data as we're doing it, we can always turn back around and go the other way, right? So that to me is like the big thing that's missing these days. And what I'm still learning to do is trust, right? Where I'm like, hey, maybe they're better at it, or maybe they have this insight that I don't have an insight in. And so even just with the product, is our customers support person, they're talking to customers all day. So they have an insight that I don't have, right? So when I'm making these product decisions, she's like, hey, I don't know about that. So then I got to put my ego aside and say, you know what? I think you're right. Let's go with it. And so that's been a massive learning experience for me, is just letting go and trusting. And yeah,
I get that. So you said when you hire somebody, it's like, you're hiring somebody that's better than you, but actually not everybody is always better than you.
Sure.
So if the person, if you look at the person, like you said about Sean, who commented earlier, you said he's a rock star.
Yeah.
Okay. So he's better at what he does in the company. He's better than you. So you can sit back and go, check him out. He's my boy. He's doing this.
Sure.
How about when, in the interests of scaling, you're hiring somebody who's not as good as you? Because actually, there isn't always going to be somebody better than you, Sandeep, that you can get your hands on. So how do you manage that?
Yeah, so I think Gary Vee says it right. Is he says something like, when I hire you, I'm hiring you. You have my trust. So I'm giving you 100% of my trust from the get, right? Mm-hmm. So you tell me how you want to do it, and then until you don't, right? So at that point, you can make a decision. Hey, maybe it's not a right fit. Maybe it's this, that. But honestly, that I think you have to just, in the beginning, is that's why you're hiring. Otherwise, don't hire. My whole thing is, there's no function here that somebody on the team can't do that's not important enough. But if it is important enough, and honestly, we don't have job specs. I am basically, when I talk to somebody, that's my interview. So I actually hire the person first, and then we'll work together to figure out what the role is. So I've actually done it the opposite. It's like, I haven't intentionally gone out and hired anybody. It's just like, hey, if I'm on with a customer, and then I'm like, and she really knows I read the product, and I'm like, hey, what do you think about joining the team? And then she's like, what I'll do? I was like, I don't know, we'll figure it out. And that's honestly how I've hired everybody, is the reverse of that, is like, I'm connecting with the person first and foremost, because I know that they might have some unique insight. So, and this is the thing about going really slow and being in control of your own destiny, right? There's no timeline. So I'm not in a rush to hire 500 people because I got to make a quota, or the stock, the investors are looking for a return. So that's why I was like, freedom. That's why at the start of the call, I was just like, I look through everything through that freedom lens, because I just want to work with cool people and do cool things. That's it. So it's a luxury, obviously, that I can appreciate now, and it's it probably not too many people can do the journey. But again, when you get to this other side, you can kind of do it play by your own rules.
Yeah. No,
Love
that's
that.
fantastic.
I don't know any other company that does it like that.
Robert, can I just say that we recently sold my parents' laminator on eBay.
Yes.
They decided it was time in life to step back from the laminator. And at 85, it was time to hang it up.
3D printer now.
Right. You know it's serious when something is laminated, was Robert's comment. I think that was in relation to the board game that you were explaining, Sandeep.
Yeah.
Did you put Sean Adams's comment up?
I did, but let's go ahead and yeah. So what has helped me is Sandeep creates an environment that is everything is proof of concept. In other words, in a startup, we're all just trying things to see what sticks. This makes it feel like we all have a say to try and test versus some corporate mandate. And then,
I like that. I think it's a great comment.
Absolutely. And Robert followed up with drive-through today, customer success specialist tomorrow. Talent will always tell.
Yeah. And Mark's come up with a good question: is how do you define cool? Because he says he's cool. I never met him, so I don't know. But from the comments, he's I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. But other people don't think he's cool.
I find that hard to believe personally, but I think he's just being modest.
What's that old John McClane song?
Yeah, how do you?
Everybody loves me, baby. What's the matter with you? So you said you want to work with cool people. How do you define cool?
So cool is right. It's like self awareness is the thing. It's like everybody's been talking about AI for so long. AI, and then I loved it. I thought it was cool, but it didn't make sense at the time, right? Early in the days. Then as ChatGPT came out and now, the Google Bard, I was like, you know what? What if we can put this here? And it really is just around experimentation because you don't know it's cool until you try it out, right? So that's what Sean's comment basically said. It's everything is a proof of concept. And then we'll decide if it's cool. So let's not throw anything out the window. Let's try it. Let's kick the tires around. And then, hey, that's pretty cool. Let's move forward with that. Or let's hire that person. So that really is as simple as, that's why I loved his comment. Yes, everything we do is proof of concept to figure out if it's cool. Then if it's cool, let's do it. Let's move forward. So I think that's a beautiful way to wrap it up. Thanks, Sean.
And I think that's really important, isn't it, from a culture perspective, in terms of not having, you can always have this, not invented here culture where someone says, I think this is a good idea, and then they either get beaten down or mobbed or something like that. Yeah. And it's important that everybody has an ability to stand up and say, I think this is a good idea. And you go, okay, let's test it out.
And that's the power of the proof of concept, right? When you have so many different people and they all have different ideas and they all want to do it a different way, as long as you're willing to do it, the proof of concept, right? So you can't just come in and just say, oh, that sucks. Give me a better alternative. So that's like what our meetings are about, is like, hey, if you don't have a better alternative or you're not willing to do the proof of concept, don't bother giving that sucks feedback, right? Because in the end, this is the power of the proof of concept. And it also makes everybody work toward it before they give out, these type of nonsensical kind of feedback. It's like, hey, give me an alternative or find me somebody that's going to do it. So it makes you think before you give out half-assed answer.
So one of the things about getting bigger as a company, Sandeep, is when you were in bed that time with your wife and it went ding and you got the first customer, you knew that customer?
No, it was a customer in Malaysia.
Okay, but you would have got to know that customer at some point. And then what happens as you get bigger is that when you're a founder, you know all the customers, you know all the case studies and that.
Yes.
But as the company gets bigger, you start losing touch with that. How have you found that? Because again, that's moving away from your fourth baby, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's been the toughest struggle for me personally, just because right, that's exactly right. I don't even talk. I mean, I'd be lucky if I got on a call maybe twice a month with a customer, right? So in the end, yeah, and that's why I have to trust these teammates of mine to then make product decisions because they're in it with the customer. And so that has been the biggest kind of thing for me in terms of learning, because I'm reading that comment that came in where he's in bed with his wife, and then I kind of lost my train of thought. But yeah, that's been a struggle. But again, but the key to all of that is hiring the right people, the ones that that you can trust wholeheartedly that they're going to make the decision that is based on their customer insights, right?
It's more than just trust, though, isn't it? I mean, it's not everybody that is comfortable with this loosey-goosey, I don't even have a job description for you, we'll figure that out after you come on board. How do you screen for that and comfort with ambiguity?
Yeah, so it's not instantaneous, right? So it's over time, right? So it's like 2, 3, 4, 5 years. So like I told you, the customer support person, she was in with customers and doing their their onboarding and all these things. And so just this last 6 months where she's been now almost doing like all of the product stuff in terms of like feature requests and all that kind of thing. And that just happened, right? So it took 5 years to get to this point. So once you understand the person, then it becomes easier. We're not just going to say, oh, you're in charge of this. It just takes time to understand that their skills are aligned with yours. And that 5 years, she had almost daily access to see how I was running things, right? So she was seeing the issues that we were putting in, the features that we were building, how I was working with dev. So over 5 years, she kind of understands my voice at that point, right? So that's the beautiful part about not hiring somebody for that particular role, because now she's building these skills from scratch. And now she's watching me do it. And so she basically knows my voice so well now, right? So that's kind of how I saw it working, where she didn't have her own preconceived, or she wasn't in that role at a different company. So she was able to see me, and then I was like her, foray into the world. So I was her teacher, essentially. So now it's almost like a second voice. And now she does it better than I did, right? Because she has very specific skills in terms of like project management that I don't have, right? So she actually does a better job than I do.
Sean says you have to find intrapreneurs. I tell people I am an IORAD franchisee.
That's right. So the way I look at the organization is everybody is kind of in charge of their domain, right? My job as the CEO and founder is to make sure that I tell them I'm like your executive assistant. You let me know where your roadblocks are, and my job is to remove that. And it only works when you're hiring the people whose pilot is lit. This is what I like to say is like your job as a thing is just to make sure whose pilot is lit, because then your job is only to provide gas, right? I don't want to be the one trying to start the fire inside and showing you what to do and all these things. We're looking for independent franchisees, as Sean put it, so that they can take something and then drive it, right? So that's been, and they're very hard to find, right? So for every person who's pilot lit, there might be 100 people you got to actually interview and go through. And that's why I've been very slow and methodical on the business side of things. On the product side of things, it's much easier because you can, say, hey, come on for 30 days, build this thing, and then you can kind of evaluate. Those are really hard skills and hard outputs that you could see immediately. But on the business side, I knew that if I was hiring a wrong person or misaligned with me, it's much harder to detect until like 6 months, a year out, and then a lot of damage is done already. So I was very methodical on the business side of things as I started bringing people in.
And it's the same across the business, whether you're in sales or marketing or services or.
Yeah.
Years ago, I often struggled with, as a salesperson, would struggle with the fact that, I was confident in my own ability, yet you sort of have to conform to this model, this kind of go-to-market strategy and operating model that the company the leadership team have designed, and sometimes you didn't quite fit within that.
Yeah, and I think the big thing is, and I'll use Sean's example from yesterday. So he basically, there's this big governmental organization, and they want, but navigating those big organizations are really hard, right? And the return is not there because you got to put in a ton of time to figure out. It's like a maze, right? So he says it's a huge opportunity, but I don't have the bandwidth. But he said, hey, here are two people outside agency that we could probably bring in that you can just hand it to them and they'll kind of navigate it for you. So he didn't just say, hey, we're not doing this or I don't have the bandwidth. He basically said, I have a solution. Here are the people that can do it, and let's get on a call and do it. So that to me is like where I love these people that have the pilot lit, is right. They'll come up with a solution. They'll find the resources. They'll do all the work. And now my job is just to say, yeah, let's do it. Let's sign the contract. Let's find the money and do it. So that's kind of like where it's been working really, really well, right? Because when you put the onus on somebody to find a solution to come up with it, and the only people that can do that are independent franchisees, right? Where they're just like, hey, this is mine. I got to own it. I don't have to do the work, but I can find the resources that we need to get this going, right?
Yeah, bring me solutions, not problems.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Mark has a great comment. I just had my team hire a new team member. They came to me and said 2 candidates were very closely matched and struggling to decide between them. I asked them who they felt they were comfortable with in the role, and they were immediately able to select one over the other. Sometimes it's just about fit, isn't it? How do you measure for fit, though?
Yeah, and so this is the difference between the ego and the intuition. The ego is basically always going to point you to the best, everything the best. The intuition says where you could be at your best, right? So it's the same thing is like when you have these 2 candidates, one might have this phenomenal resume, right? And the other person, you just know that, hey, they're probably a better fit, right? So this is why it's like these are like these non-asked outputs that I was telling you about. It really is my way of kind of filtering that, is like, hey, that's how you could be the best inside of IRAD, the company, because that is the key telling for me is like, hey, I don't want to hire specialists in these little things, right? We're not at that size yet. We just want generalists. And if you have your pilot lit and you're excited and you're bringing solutions, that to me are like the instant tells for me, right? But again, that takes years to develop. Only the clarity that comes, right? Where you're able to look at a person and say, hey, they'd be a good fit inside the company. And it doesn't matter what your resume looks like. So that's why I'm like, the clarity part of understanding your business, who you are, it just brings all of this other kind of superpowers underneath where you can instantly look at somebody and differentiate between the best and being at his best. Like, and that just comes with time and a lot of failures.
Yeah. What about coaching then within the organization? Do you kind of support that? Do you have an approach that brings the best out of people?
Yeah, and my whole thing about, so it's like unsolicited advice, as I call it. Nobody likes unsolicited advice. But if you come to me and you want something specific, that's when I can provide my input, right? So I'm like, when unsolicited advice comes only when things are blurry, right? When you are not sure, that's when somebody feels like they need to put their input on. So I'm like, hey, identify when the vision is not clear, and then you can brainstorm it together. But yeah, I think it's a pretty open culture in terms of like coaching, and I go to other people, right? Where Sean is like he's like the sales guru, right? So in the end, he has so many different insights about different things. So I think we're all help each other in terms of that, see things that we might miss just because they're in it. And this only comes when you have no ego and because truly collaborative environments only come when everybody is willing to be vulnerable, right? So that's the part of when there's no egos, and that's when the best idea wins. And I think I've just from me being vulnerable enough to listen to somebody else who's not done it for 15 years, that I think because I'm doing it, everybody else will do it. So it's just leading by example. And that's the culture that we have here.
A couple of additional comments have come in. Mark continued, what I also told them was there was no wrong choice they were making.
That's exactly right.
Regarding the hiring. We have from Robert, 95% of buying decisions are made in the unconscious mind. Dr. Gerald Zaltman, how customers think. And he goes on to say, hiring is buying. And then Mark says, Max Planck, quantum theorist and Nobel Prize winner, wrote, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And finally, we have a scoreboard. Vulnerability 1, ego 0. Vulnerability for the win. All right.
And I think that goes well with Robert's comment earlier on about servant leadership.
Absolutely.
I put Michael's up because the ego needs
Michael's
just came in.
Oh,
great conversation.
Yes, great conversation. Absolutely. As we approach the top of the hour, any final thoughts from the panelists before we give Sandeep the last word?
Brilliant. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yes,
I mean, I've found this fascinating and incredibly comforting to hear you talk about your journey. So thank you. I owe you a huge amount for that.
Thank you, Sandeep. It's been excellent. Your counsel has been excellent, and the way you deliver it is fantastic as well. So thank you so much for coming on. It's exactly what it's better than what we wanted.
Wow.
I will share this with you. I want to thank you specifically for the talk around ego. And I say this because I think of myself as egoless. I am not. And I am learning that it's okay to listen to it. And it's okay to listen to the whispers too. That was a paradigm that I hadn't heard before, and I'm incredibly appreciative of it. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and Rob, when we think that we're the people that think they're egoless, like me and you, we have the biggest egos.
You're probably right about that. Yes.
Yeah, we all see Rob's ego every day.
Yeah, that could be too.
Thanks, John.
Sandeep, any last thoughts?
No, this has been a ton of fun, and Rob, thank you so much for putting this together. And Rob's been amazingly generous with his time, and we've had some good talks. But this was a lot of fun, and I put my hand on my chest and do a little bow with my head just to show my appreciation.
Our pleasure. Thank you very much. Before we sign out, I wanted to thank, of course, all of the panelists. Sandeep, thank you so much for being here today. And to all of the audience, especially those that were contributing to the conversation with your questions, with your insights, again, thank you for being an active part of the show. I do want to share with you, if you have something to say, we're always looking for additional guests. Sean, you had a lot to say. I'm just saying. If you have something to say, we invite you to the digitaldownload.live website under the Be Our Guest section. Fill out that information and we will reach back out to you and work to get you on the show. Thank you all for another fantastic Friday episode of, what is it again, Adam?
I can't remember. We've been here for a while, though.
It is the Digital Download, the longest running weekly business talk show on LinkedIn Live. Thank you all.
Thanks everybody. Thanks, Sandeep.
Bye-bye.